everyone, and welcome back. I have been away for quite a while. I've had a bunch of home renovations going on, which means I had to pack all of my painting gear and filming equipment away. But now that that's done, I am going to be making some new stuff for you, starting with this look, a very in-depth look at the miniatures that came with the Etherfields board game. This was a Kickstarter project, probably about 6 to 12 months ago. And at a basic level, it is a deck building / card based board game where you explore a world of dreamscapes and mysteries. You play through various scenarios, try to figure out what's happening, unravel the story, so on and so forth. Before we look at the figures, I want to go into a couple of disclaimers. First is that there will be spoilers for the names of these creatures so that we have a reference point for each one. The second disclaimer is I have not played the game yet at all, or really looked at any of the cards or systems in depth. We're still in lockdown here in the UK at the time of recording, which means that I will not be playing this tabletop anytime soon, unfortunately. So with that said, let's take a look at what's included. We will start with the core box minis, which include the player characters, and then move on to the actual creatures and monsters that you'll encounter when you play this game. Player models each have two minis. They have what's called a normal version and an awakened version, and I don't know anything about that mechanic, but there are four classes: the specialist, the gambler, the tough guy, and the free spirit, and then there's a fifth character expansion that they added called the Reaper. So let's take a look. The specialist looks like he uses all these kind of funky machines, kind of an engineer. It's a real kind of machine-human hybrid. I really like the wings and the feather effects that's going on, offset by this mechanical steampunk look with the legs of the chair and this strange device that he's using. Next is the gambler, and while these look like they're a stack of books, they are not. They're actually cards, tarot cards or playing cards, and the gambler can kind of change fate or change things to their will, apparently, when they're in the game. So I'm looking forward to finding out how that plays. The third character is simply called the Tough Guy, and I think he's kind of a brute force type of character. There are, again, some really cool vibes going on here with the Roman Legionnaire style helmet and this very heavy armor, and that looks like some kind of war pick that's being used as a weapon. The fourth character is simply called the Free Spirit. According to the book that comes with the game, they identify with the very nature of their soul and with consciousness. Beyond that, I haven't read very much about them, but I very much love the look of this character. You have the one kind of, I want to say angel wing, but it could be anything. It could be a bird, raven, or anything like that. And then the awakened version on the right just looks completely nuts. I really, really like the look of this character. The final character is called the Reaper. This is the 5th one from the expansion. And they look like they work off some kind of wound or damage system where the more damage they take, they can then turn that back on things in the game. Next we have a batch of shapeshifter tokens. It comes with 2. The first is called a human shapeshifter set. These are the ones you see here. And then we have creature shapeshifters. These ones look very, very cool. A lot of these minis give me Bloodborne vibes or From Software vibes if you've ever played any of their games. This is a huge lantern that this guy's carrying. Really good opportunity for some OSL there. And with the creature minis, again, looking very cool. They all have these kind of... They're either half transformed into beasts/birds, or they are wearing masks that make them look like that, but such a cool aesthetic. Next up we have some miscellaneous tokens, and I think from left to right, before they span around, they were the party token, that's the bunch of hands, the bunch of faces is the first player token, and then I have no idea what the penguin is, but it's a penguin with a top hat and a suitcase, so what more do you need to know? The last figure that comes in this box is not so much a mini, it's not a player character either, it's some kind of encounter, and it's Belshazzar, and this thing is absolutely incredible looking. It's huge, the detail is insane. It's a woman that is carrying some kind of stag-like creature, but the detail on this it just blew me away. It's going to take a very long time to paint, but I think it's going to look very, very cool when it's done. Next will be the creatures, and they come in a separate box called the Creatures of Etherfields. some of these names might be inaccurate because there's not really a reference for them in the box unless you go digging through the cards, which I didn't want to do so I didn't spoil myself. So I used the Kickstarter images for some of the names. First of all, we have the Box Knight. How much damage can this thing do, really? It's kind of cute looking. Probably just cardboard boxes and a dagger, and that's it. But we'll find out. Next is a creature that is called the Sweet Scent. That's all I can find about it. It has wings like a lot of the minis do, a lot of the figures do for Etherfields, but beyond that I don't really know what it is. It could be some kind of harpy-like creature would be my closest guess. But a very cool sculpt, a lot of detail, great dry brushing opportunity there on the wings as well. Next is a creature called the Murder of Crows, and yes, this person's head has exploded into ravens or crows. That is how cool this figure is. This is, again, giving me kind of Victorian Bloodborne vibes, just because I played a lot of that game, but, I mean, who doesn't want an enemy where their head has exploded into birds in their game? The next creature is called the Warden. Not much about this figure, big long trench coat, carrying a lantern. It should be a great mini to put some object source lighting on there to play around with if that is your thing. The next creature I couldn't find a name for, so I have just called it a wolf, which is basically what it is. Not quite a usual wolf though, it's less fur but more, from the sculpt at least, they look like vines. And again, considering the size of these things, and this is a D20 that we're comparing it to, the detail is just phenomenal. Next up is the Mimic. Oh, I'm sorry, the Locker. don't think they could call it a mimic, but to anyone who's played Dungeons and Dragons at all, it is a mimic. Not that big, but it looks like some kind of cupboard or wardrobe or indeed locker that has transformed into something horrible and is now going to try and eat you. Next up is the Wolfling, and this looks similar to the previous one, but a little bit more fantastical, I suppose. It has a pair of wings coming out the back. There was a very small shield or buckler attached to the side of it. Should be another fun one to paint. In fact, all of these are just going to be incredible to paint, I think. Next is the Wraith, and if you look at this from the side, it is coming out of some kind of building, and it looks like it's either eating a person or sucking their soul into them. Could do some great kind of spectral effects on this if you wanted to. This is the Moth Knight. Looks like she's leaning backwards a little bit, but overall these minis are actually quite sturdy, I have to say. The next monster is called the Candle, and what I realised while filming this is that it is, yes, that is a pair of legs sticking out of a chest of drawers, and it's absolutely horrifying. This is straight out of a nightmare somewhere. Yeah, I don't know what the hell this thing is, but it's really, really cool. The next one is called the Masked Man, and this differs a lot from the concept art, but it is astonishingly cool. What you'll see in a second when it spins around is that the figure carries a bunch of masks, but they're stitched into the inside of the cloak. And knowing this game and the kind of aesthetic it's going for, it wouldn't surprise me if they were actual faces and not masks that were stitched into the cloak. Next up is the frog. Not much I can say about this, but it is a frog, very small frog that has some kind of fairy wings behind the look of it. Now this is straight out of Bioshock. It is called the automaton, but one arm looks like a giant drill bit that has a huge pipe connecting up to the back of this thing where some kind of gases or liquids are held, and the other arm is this huge crushing mechanical thing that just looks ready to ruin your day. This thing is called the Scarecrow, and at the front there it looks like a woman's head leaning back into these huge feathery wings that end into big hands, and it doesn't look like any Scarecrow I've ever seen. It is terrifying and I love it. The next creature is called simply Nyx, and I'm getting major hag vibes from this, D&D hag vibes, this kind of hunched over, unkempt, ragged looking creature. It could be male, looks more female to me. And the Kickstarter, this is actually called the Pearl Catcher, I think, so they have changed the name at some point. I'm probably going to paint this very sea hag like. Next up is the two-tailed fox, and this is one of my favourite figures from the entire set. This thing is just phenomenal. It's on the bigger side. There's so much detail on this thing. You could really go crazy with the paint colours on this thing, and I don't think it would look out of place at all. Another favourite of mine next is the Chimera, the many-headed creature, and on the back of the shield here you can see the lion's head is carved there or attached. I haven't found the other heads yet. I know that the woman on the throne has one, and she may be holding another one, but this thing is insane. This is called the Ancient Ram. I imagine this thing is probably centuries old and is looking very kind of, it looks like it's made of natural substances like wood and vines and things like that. I imagine it's all kind of cracked and aged, so I think that is the paint job I'll use here. And this last batch of creatures are pretty big. This one is called the Tormentor. I am getting serious Darkest Dungeon vibes from this thing with a Plague Doctor. There's so much texture on this thing's cloak. It's going to be crazy to kind of dry brush all of that. And this huge scythe that it's carrying, this thing is just, it looks so good. Next is the Librarian, also looking like he's come straight on a holiday from Yharnam. Doesn't look like any librarian I've ever seen, but also, again, carrying this huge lamp, so if you're into object source lighting or you want to try, this is going to be a great figure to practice that on. He has no face, I should just point this out. You probably can't see it with the shadow from the lightbox, but underneath there is not a face, it's just this massive flesh, and that was enough for me, so I moved on to the next figure. Which is called the Fortune Teller. Again, a lot of motion captured in this sculpt. This is crazy. It looks like she's either spinning around or there's energy or wind or something that's making all of this cloth move. It's such a dynamic sculpt. It looks so good. And the final figure is called Mortis. I'm not quite sure what Mortis is. It looks like some kind of deformed harpy / hag thing, and has this horrible sagging stomach. Who knows what is inside there, if anything. So that's going to be it for today's video. It's the end of the minis that came with it. There are 2 other boxes coming at some point next year, but for now, these things are phenomenal. I really just can't wait to get started painting these and eventually put them on a tabletop, hopefully in the not too distant future. Do let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see a painting guide for any of these specifically. I do read and reply to every single comment. If you found the video helpful or interesting, please leave a like or maybe subscribe. Otherwise, I will catch you next time, and thank you for watching.